25 seconds.
Well, it began when I was working at Lockheed, and she was going to high school at Van Nuys. And I worked nights, and she would come to the house, and I'd take her home. She lived quite a ways out of town. And I'd take her and her foster sister home, and that's how I met her. She was about 15 then, I believe. And through the months, you know, we become friends. Her foster mother and foster father were going to have to go to Virginia for his job. This was just the start of the war. And her foster mother asked me if I would be interested in marrying Norma Jean. And at that time, I was ready to go in the service too. And I felt, well, I could marry her and give her a home until I got out of the service. At least she wouldn't have to go to an orphanage, because she would have had to gone back to an orphanage at that time. So we waited until she was 16 and I was 21, and we got married. And we were married right over here in Westwood, just over the hill here. Yeah, it's a long time ago. And then I had to go in the service. And while I was gone, she first started as a model for Radio Plane. An Army photographer saw her. And then she went into modeling, and that modeling cost me more money than she made buying clothes for her. And then she had a chance to go into the movies.
My secretary rang and said, Mr. Lyon, there's a very beautiful young girl here to see you, but she doesn't have an appointment. I said, well, Mary, you don't have to have an appointment to see me. Send her in. So a moment later, in walked the most gorgeous young girl you've ever seen in your life. This golden hair, beautiful little print dress, and 22 years old. And I said, sit down. So she sat by the desk, and I began asking various questions, what she'd done. She told me a little extra work and a bit here and there. And I said, what's your ambition? She said, to be a film star. And I looked at her and I said, well, honey, you're in pictures, and I think you will be a film star.
But she had to be signaled. And I understand later because they didn't want one of their young stars to become pregnant and have to leave. So that was the end.
I said, I don't think you can use the name Norma Jean Doherty if you're going to be a star. We've got to change your name. By the contract, we have a right to change the name. So she agreed, and we looked in the book and thought of all kind of combinations of names. Nothing suited us. And finally, I remembered a girl I knew in New York, a stage star by the name of Marilyn Miller. And I said, to me, you're a Marilyn. And she said, that's a lovely name. I said, all right, that's your first name. We couldn't find a second name, but she suddenly turned to me and said, Mr. Lyon, could I use my grandmother's name? I said, what was that? She said, Monroe. Marilyn Monroe.
I never knew Marilyn Monroe. I only knew Norma Jean.
She would take dramatic lessons for 3 hours. She'd have lunch. After lunch, she would take dancing lessons for an hour, singing lessons for an hour, fencing lessons for an hour, and then go on the back lot and ride horseback. And I said to her one day, Marilyn, why do you work so hard? The other kids that are under contract, I call sometimes at 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, they're still sleeping from being out the night before. She said, well, Mr. Lyon, she said, I work hard because one day maybe opportunity will knock, and I want to be prepared.
I said, I'd like to have her read for us. And she did. Read beautifully. I remember she, if you recall the role in the film, she played most of the part on a sofa. And there was no sofa in the room. And so she got down on the floor and did it very well. I instantly said yes, by all means. This was the first role I think Marilyn had ever played. Her interpretation was everything, perhaps more than I'd expected.
What's the big idea standing there staring at me, Uncle Lon?
Don't call me Uncle Lon.
I thought you liked it.
Maybe I did. I don't anymore.
I had the market send over some salt mackerel for you. I know how you love it for breakfast.
Some sweet kid. It's late. Why don't you go to bed?
She was wonderful in the scene. But good as she was, I had no idea that she would ever attain to the figure, the image for a whole country, a whole world that eventually she did.
In fact, when Asphalt Jungle had the premiere, I was one of the guards doing duty down there keeping the traffic out. And that was one of her first big movies.
Well, by the time I actually got around to meeting Marilyn, she was already something, at the beginnings at least, of a legend. I knew that she was going to appear in the movie of my play, The 7-Year Itch. I knew her genuine, almost childlike passion for pets and animals. And I knew that she would identify not with the victims of the creature of the Black Lagoon, but with the creature from the Black Lagoon itself.
Didn't you just love the picture? I did. But I just felt so sorry for the creature at the end.
Sorry for the creature? Why'd you want him, to marry the girl?
He was kind of scary looking, but he wasn't really all bad. I think he just craved a little affection. You know, a sense of being loved and needed and wanted.
That's a very interesting point of view.
Oh, do you feel the breeze from the subway? Isn't it delicious?
In order to get that, you had to have a man with a wind machine down inside this pit. Now, you got to remember his vantage point. He was looking up at Marilyn this way, and he had this machine. He went out of his mind and began to vroom like this. The skirts went up like that, and suddenly we had the movie made. And she just loved it. She would, oh, try it again. It's lovely.
Oh, here comes another one.
She always, in that sense, wanted, you see, to be an actress, and therefore felt somehow unfulfilled. The more success there was, the more unfulfilled she was, so that she wanted to make the break. The actual idea of coming to the actor studio, I think, came from Mr. Kazan, who had met her here with Arthur Miller at that time. This was before they were married, before the marriage to Arthur Miller, and who suggested that she should come to New York. This was about, I think, in 54 or 55, thereabouts. And so it was then, actually, that I first met her at a session. She was one of the 2 or 3 most sensitive and most talented people that I've seen in my life. One of the others is Marlon Brando, for instance. And to me, she had the same kind of sensitivity.
By the time Marilyn was ready to come back to Hollywood, we had, by that time, perfected, in our opinion, a vehicle for her in which she could really shine, in that she could do everything that she could do that was sexy and wonderful and delicious and exciting and tender and dirty and all the great things she could do, and still be just outside that pasteboard character that 20th had invented for her.
The moment the film is running in the camera, Marilyn acts. You cannot get her to stop it. Even if she would forget a line, which occasionally she did, not because she didn't know it, but because she was so critical of herself, that she would hate the way she'd read the last line and begin thinking about that instead of reading the line that was supposed to be said.
Difficulty in lines would be an understatement for Miss Monroe. Miss Monroe simply could not memorize anything. She could not memorize, when she lived on Lexington Avenue, which she did in New York, she could not memorize Lexington Avenue.
Joe Curtis, my assistant, would read her the line. We coached him to throw the line at her. She kept acting all through the coaching so that you didn't feel that she was listening to a prompt.
Joe Curtis's voice says, "I've always wanted love." He talks like a dialogue director. Marilyn says, "I've always dreamed." Joe, what the f*** was you? Cut. But nobody dares say cut. So he just says, "Go on, darling, go on."
It was really quite remarkable. There's several pauses like that in Bus Stop if you look carefully.
I don't know why I keep expecting myself to fall in love, but I do.
Well, I know I expect to someday.
I'm seriously beginning to wonder if there's a kind of love I have in mind.
What's that?
I don't know. Well, you see, I've been going with guys since I was about 12.
Honest?
Honey, I almost married a cousin of mine when I was 14. But Pappy wouldn't have it.
I never heard of anyone marrying so young.
Down in the Ozarks, we don't waste much time. I sure am glad, though, I never married my cousin Malcolm. 'Cause he turned out real bad, just like Pappy predicted. But I sure was crazy about him at the time. And I've been losing my head about some guy ever since. Bo was the first one that ever wanted to marry me. Since my cousin Malcolm, naturally, I'd like to get married and have a family and all them things.
But you've never been in love?
I don't know. Maybe I have and I didn't know it. That's what I mean. Maybe I don't know what love is.
In the actor studio, she did a scene from Eugene O'Neill, Anna Christie. And it was wonderful. The luminous quality that she had on the screen was oddly enough not reduced, but some strange way enlarged in life. Usually it's the other way around.
She was never satisfied with herself in any way, you know? And she should have been. I said, honey, why don't you settle down, use a word like Betty Grable, and just be a song and dance girl, more or less.
Having a heat wave, a tropical heat wave. The way that I move, that thermometer proves.
She certainly can.
I certainly can.
Oh, no, I want to play Karamazov or one of these big, heavy parts or something like this. She said, I just don't want to sing or I just want to play light comedy or something like this. She always wanted to be something more.
She wanted to do other kind of roles. And the idea of doing Grushenka and Dostoevsky novel was not the kind of idiotic idea that some people interpreted it to be.
She and I were in Beverly Hills. She was shopping for kitchen things at the hardware store. We parked a few blocks from the hardware store and we're walking down Rodeo Drive. And Marilyn was in slacks and a loose blouse and a kerchief over her head and dark glasses.
See, it was a simple thing to disguise Marilyn. Put a turban on her, and we used to have a red bang of hair, you know what a bang is, I'm sure, and put it underneath the turban, pull it down, a pair of dark glasses. And we've gone many places that nobody ever looked around. Never had the slightest idea that was Marilyn Monroe.
We were talking and walking and then walking, and all of a sudden there was screeching of brakes, and the people who were walking along the sidewalk turned and stared, and the whole world stopped. It was like some big Technicolor spectacular. And I looked around, and there was Marilyn Monroe. Before it had been Marilyn. And then we went on, and the cars started up again. And I turned to her as we were going into the store, and I said, "Did you do that on purpose?" And she said, "You noticed?" I said, "How could I help?" She said, "Well, for some reason, all of a sudden, I wanted to be Marilyn Monroe." And she could turn it on.
We came in through the back entrance of the Beverly Hills Hotel by the swimming pool and walked across it. And the swimming pool of the Beverly Hills Hotel is, of course, something else again. It's this ice blue water surrounded by William Morris office agent exhibitors who are there on holiday, and the agents are drinking bright red Bloody Marys, stirring them with green plastic swizzle sticks, and it's the healthiest atmosphere you've ever seen in your life. And Marilyn suddenly grabbed my arm, you know, in genuine terror. And I said, "What's the matter? What's the trouble?" She said, "Well, I always have to hold on to people when I'm in spooky places."
She used to call me, she'd be lonely, and she was a lonely girl all the way through, and not so much in the mornings, but many times at night, she'd call me in the middle of the night. She'd just want to talk to you, talk to me, say, or anybody, you know, and she just wanted to talk, just nothing.
Well, a number of years had passed. She'd been through the Hollywood mill. A lot has been written and said about this. Perhaps the whole experience was too much for her.
Marilyn was such a perfectionist, she would drive herself so hard, and she would get so wrapped up, and that's one of the things that led to the sleeping pills and things like this at night, because she would go home from the studio, and you work all day long and start early, and then go home like 6 o'clock at night, and right away she'd go to bed. I'd say, Marilyn, stay up for a while, you know, unwind, have a drink or do something, and get tired, and take a couple of baths or do something, walk it around the street or anything. She said, I got to get my rest. So she'd take a pill and go to bed. Then she'd wake up about 10 o'clock in the evening, and she'd say, oh, and she'd take another one or two or something like this, you know, and that's what led to those pill deals, and she wasn't taking them just to anything but relax.
I got many calls from Marilyn at any time of the day or night, because we had that kind of friendship. She had found that when all else failed, if she had a massage, especially if I massaged her feet, she would fall asleep. And I can't tell you how many times she fell asleep.
She'd have to be awakened in the morning by another kind of drug, a benzodrine.
And she couldn't go on the set now and be dopey because you don't remember your lines, you don't do anything. So it would take us a time to get all organized and all dressed and everything else. And by the time we wasted 2 or 3 hours, well, she was in pretty good shape, you see. But that was a bad thing, and but it was just the way she'd work it. And she didn't mean to, but that's what happened all the time, you know.
There'd be fewer and fewer hours a day when we could work with her. This wasn't her fault. She made every desperate effort to so far as the picture was concerned, and she herself. But one finally had the feeling that she was doomed. She was splendid in the picture, by the way. This extraordinary quality that she had, this kind of genius. I don't mean just an extravagant talent, but something strange and unpredictable would come out of her that perhaps a professional actress couldn't have furnished.
Why are you killing me?
Just stand aside, honey.
Okay, you won. All right, you won. You
Let
won.
go of that rope. Get out of here.
Guido.
Follow him. Choke him down, Guido. Get off me, Rosalind.
Stop.
Get Rosalind, shut up and pull that horse down. Come on. 1, 2.
I had the impression that she believed what was happening, that it wasn't a role that she was playing, that she actually believed it.
Paris Match was very interested in seeing the new Marilyn Monroe. The new Marilyn Monroe meaning a woman of 35 that had slimmed down, did not have that baby fat of the misfit years. The new Marilyn Monroe that was going through a lot of traumatic experiences, rumored that she had attempted to commit suicide twice. She was nervous, showing up late on the set. They'd heard about this. They were interested in seeing what she looked like on film. We were shooting at the swimming pool, and there was a lot of nervousness, and, well, Marilyn just walked over, had a little conversation with George Cukor, walked back on the set, and off came the bathrobe. At first there was a little pair of panties. Off came the panties. And there was Marilyn, at 35, an incredible body. She was so animated. She dog-paddled in the water like a child. It brought all of a sudden to my mind as a woman starting out in her career all over again, not knowing really what to do, playing, laughing, giggling. I showed her the pictures. She giggled. She made one request. I don't want to see Liz Taylor on the cover of any magazine in the world the week you release these.
She was kind of like a rubber band stretching. On this hand was the person, Norma Jean, who had a tremendous religious background, and you got the person, Marilyn Monroe, who quite obviously didn't have too much religion, and it just kept stretching until it finally snapped, that's all.
I think she is one of the most extraordinary actresses that ever lived. I think she is a combination of Greta Garbo and Charlie Chaplin, because she has that wonderful comedy, that pitiful, sweet kind of sorry for, where you feel sorry for her and laugh at the same time that Chaplin has. And she has the fabulous, ephemeral beauty of Garbo.
But she was beginning to think more, not so much of movies in that sense, not cutting out movies, but she was beginning to think of acting as a stage medium, hoping actually to be able to accomplish it. And then what would have happened with the movie things, I don't know.
If Marilyn were alive today, she would indeed be 46. She'd be moved into the younger Bette Davis position, which wouldn't have been Marilyn's game at all. Perhaps I over-romanticize it, but Marilyn was indeed a bird of passage. She made a tremendous impact during the rather limited time that she passed through our lives. And I'm not speaking from her point of view, but surely from everybody else's, it's better to remember it that way.
Marilyn today is probably a bigger star than she was when she was alive.
4, 5, 6.
Oh, I'm terribly sorry.
My fault.
You're not hurt, are you?
I don't think so.
I wish you'd make sure.
Why?
Because usually when people find out who I am, they get themselves a wheelchair, a shyster lawyer, and sue me for $750,000.
Don't worry, I won't sue you no matter who you are.
Thank you.
Who are you?
No, really.
Sugar! Come on! Honestly.
Cheerio.
Haven't I seen you somewhere before?
Not very likely.
You staying at the hotel?
Not at all.
Your face is familiar.
Possible you've seen it in the newspapers or magazines. Vanity Fair.
That must be it.
Would you mind moving just a little, please? You're blocking my view.
Your view of what?
They run up a red and white flag on the yacht when it's time for cocktails.
You own a yacht? Which one is it? The big one?
Certainly not. With all the unrest in the world, I don't think anybody should have a yacht that sleeps more than 12.
I quite agree. Tell me, who runs up that flag? Your wife?
No, my flags do it.
Who mixes the cocktails? Your wife?
No, my cocktails do it. Look, if you're interested in whether I am married or not...
Oh, I'm not interested at all.
Well, I'm not.
That's very interesting. How's the stock market?
Up, up, up.
I bet while we were talking you made like $100,000?
Could be. You play the market?
No, the ukulele. And I sing, too.
For your own amusement?
A bunch of us girls are appearing at the hotel. Sweet Sue and her society syncopators.
Oh, you're a society girl.
Oh, yes, quite. You know, Bryn Mawr, Vassar. We're just doing this for a lark.
Syncopators. Does that mean you play that very fast music, jazz?
Yeah, real hot.